Margaret Jane Chauncy left work on October 20th, 1987, and had a coworker follow her home, as she suspected she was being watched by a man in a black car. That was the last time anyone saw Margaret or her red Pontiac Fiero. She was reported missing after failing to show up for work 2 days in a row. It's been nearly 38 years. Investigators are no closer to solving this case than they were in 1987. So Margaret's case file sits in a box in a basement.
Hello, and welcome to Box in the Basement podcast. I'm your host, Arlene.
And I'm Leah.
In the last 50 years, the U.S. has had nearly 1 million homicides, and since then, over 250,000 cases sit in a box in a basement where all hopes for justice go to die. In 1996, someone shot my uncle Leon Laurelis, changing my life forever and leaving a devastating hole in my heart, and his case remains unsolved. Join me and my wife Leah as we shed light on these forgotten victims, their life, the loved ones they left behind, the evidence, and the theories of who committed these crimes, leaving communities in fear and leaving families without answers. Support our effort to change the justice system through the Homicide Families Victims' Rights Act, as we hope to make a difference with our audience as we remember the victims and demand justice. In 1996, my world was shattered when my uncle Leon Laurelis was shot execution-style in a small town in Texas. To this day, his murder remains unsolved, and the pain of that injustice continues to haunt me, my family, and Leon's friends and coworkers. Here at Box in the Basement, we want to shed light on the overwhelming number of unsolved murders and disappearances here in Texas and beyond. We want to bring awareness to the lesser-known cases that got little to no attention, in hopes that someone listening will come forward with any information, because we strongly believe all lives matter. Ultimately, we want to get justice for Leon and for all the victims whose cases are sitting, collecting dust in a box in a basement. Please note that this episode contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Please like and follow our pages on all social media platforms for Box in the Basement Podcast and Justice for Leon Laurelis. And now you can also find us on YouTube.
1987 saw Black Monday. The Dow Jones dropped over 22% in one fell swoop. The AIDS epidemic became a crisis and a political football. Ronald Reagan implored Mikhail Gorbachev to, quote, tear down this wall. That's the Berlin Wall, if you have no idea what I'm talking about. Mike Tyson beat James Smith for the WBA heavyweight title. NFL players went on strike, and Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson set a new world record in the 100-meter dash, then had his title stripped and record vacated after it was revealed he was using performance-enhancing drugs. Lisa and Cult Jam topped the Billboard Hot 100 the week of October 20th with Lost in Emotion, and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band was number 1 on the country charts with Fishin' in the Dark. Fatal Attraction was number 1 at the box office that week and would end up being one of the top grossing films of the year, and Presumed Innocent by Scott Turow sat atop the New York Times bestseller list. We've been to Texarkana before, so I'll give you the quick rundown here. Texarkana is in the far northeast corner of Texas, bordering Arkansas. In fact, the Texarkana, Texas metropolitan area includes the city on the Arkansas side, which is also called Texarkana. It's always been a major transportation junction in the area, dating to the pre-railroad days. It's on the Red River, and it's located on main lines of communication between major urban areas such as Dallas, which is 180 miles to the west, Shreveport, Louisiana, which is 75 miles to the south, and Little Rock, Arkansas, which is 140 miles to the east. Today, Texarkana is home to just under 36,000 residents, most of whom work at the nearby Red River Army Depot, the local hospital system, or Cooper Tire and Rubber, which has a large plant in the city. In 1987, the city was considerably larger, with around 52,000 residents. The economy still centered on the Army Depot, along with the Lone Star Army ammunition plant.
We don't have a ton of information on Margaret Chauncy, unfortunately. We do know that she was born on July 2nd, 1963, so she was 24 at the time of her disappearance. She had 2 daughters, Brandy and Ashley, who were 7 and 2 in 1987. Margaret just went through a nasty divorce, and she was reportedly dating a married man in October of 1987. And it wasn't a secret. People knew she was dating a married man, and this man's wife also knew. But we'll get into that a little later. Margaret was a nurse, an LVN to be specific, and she worked at a local hospital called St. Michael's, which I believe has been renamed. On October 20th, Margaret finished her shift at the hospital and headed home. But she asked a coworker to follow her to her apartment complex because she was convinced a large white man in a black car had been following her around, stalking her, watching her. So at around 11:15 p.m., this coworker sees Margaret pull into her apartment complex in her red 1983 Pontiac Fiero. But investigators believe she never actually made it into her apartment. Margaret failed to show up for her next 2 shifts at St. Michael's, and this same coworker called police to file a missing persons report. Investigators showed up to Margaret's apartment and noted that nothing seemed to be disturbed or out of place. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of burglary, no sign of a struggle inside. One thing the police did note was that her nursing uniform was missing, and this is what led them to believe that Margaret never actually made it inside that night on October 20th after work. Her red Pontiac was also missing.
Margaret was never seen or heard from again. Investigators had several working theories from the beginning, and we'll go ahead and talk about those since that's essentially as far as this investigation has gone. Police apparently had some solid leads and persons of interest in the late 1980s. They believed, at least for a time, that Margaret's ex-husband, her current boyfriend, or the boyfriend's wife might be involved. The investigation hit brick wall after brick wall, and there was never enough information or evidence to file any charges or make any serious headways in finding answers. So let's start with the question we always ask when an adult goes missing. Did Margaret leave under her own power? Did she simply walk away from her life? I have my doubts in this particular case. First off, Margaret, though she had a bit of relationship drama, seemingly enjoyed her life. She had a boyfriend, married as he was, she had 2 young children, and she liked her job. Her family and friends couldn't see her just up and leaving her kids behind with no explanation. Unlike a lot of missing persons cases we've covered here, in this instance, the victim did not leave behind any personal effects. Her car, her purse, her ID, none of that was left behind. That can be attributed to the police's theory that she never actually made it inside her home. Apparently, there were rumors circulating in the early days of the investigation that Margaret may have run off to Mexico, but I have no idea what the basis was for that particular rumor or who started it. I don't find the notion of her leaving voluntarily too believable in any case.
I agree. I think she was the victim of foul play, especially since she openly voiced her fears of being followed or watched to a coworker. Margaret's ex-husband, Roger, was interviewed, but his alibi checked out. He was at work at the time of her disappearance. That doesn't rule out his involvement entirely, obviously. Margaret had had previous run-ins with her boyfriend's wife, including an incident where the wife tracked down Margaret's car and keyed it. But again, if any of these three people were involved, there was never enough to file charges. I tend to believe that someone close to Margaret was involved in her disappearance. She made it to her apartment complex, but probably never made it inside. Even if she did make it inside, the lack of forced entry and signs of a struggle make me believe that if someone knocked on the door, she knew the person well enough to open it. It's doubtful she would have opened the door for a stranger when she felt like she was being followed. But if we go with the theory that she never made it inside her apartment, then she was probably accosted in the parking lot. So someone had to know her schedule, know her car, and know where she lived. These things were much harder to find out in 1987, since we all didn't have an on-demand access to the internet. We had hard copy phone books with our names and addresses listed. But it was always possible to opt out of that. It's certainly possible that someone random who had no personal connection to Margaret had identified her as a potential victim and was following her and learning her schedule and routines. She never mentioned recognizing the man in the black car or the car itself, so we can't rule out the possibility of a stranger's involvement. But given the circumstances of Margaret's life at the time, I tend to believe someone she knew was involved. That doesn't mean they didn't hire a stranger to actually carry out whatever crimes they did, to be clear.
In 2024, an organization called Rapid Compassion Collective volunteered to search nearby bodies of water for Margaret's red Fiero. They descended on a private lake in Texarkana that seemed promising and had not been searched by law enforcement in the years prior. Volunteers dredged the lake, and lo and behold, they did recover a car, but it wasn't the one they were looking for. It was a Dodge Stratus that had been reported stolen in 1999. And unfortunately, that's where the case of Margaret Chauncy stands today. She is considered a missing person, so we'll give you the rundown here. Margaret Jane Chauncy, also known as Margaret Latimer, went missing near her apartment in Texarkana, Texas on October 20th, 1987. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5'6" tall, 125 pounds, with blonde hair and hazel eyes. She has pierced ears, bridge work on her front teeth, and was wearing a blue and white striped blouse with a matching skirt or pants, a long gold chain necklace with 2 children's gold bands on it, a gold watch with her sister's name, Carolyn Sewell, engraved on the back. She was driving a 1983 Pontiac Fiero, red, with Arkansas license plate MXB670. If you have any information about her disappearance, please contact the Texarkana Police Department at 903-798-3135 or your local FBI field office.
We are excited to announce that we are now a part of the Darkcast Network. Darkcast Network, the best in indie podcasts. Check out all the great shows at darkcastnetwork.com.
Hi there, I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And together, we are the husband and wife team behind And Then They Were Gone, a true crime podcast about unsolved missing persons cases. Each week, we take a deep dive into a case that I have researched and written about and that you have never heard of.
Right. And I react naturally and usually leave you with a whole lot of stuff to edit out of the podcast.
Very true. But I do love getting your analysis and a fresh perspective on these crimes that I've been spending so much time learning about. So you can see us on your favorite podcast app every Wednesday when we release a brand new episode.
And find us on the socials at ATTWGpod.
And you can also visit us on our website, andthentheyweregone.com.
Could you hold the key to bringing someone home?
44-year-old Lisa Chandler called her mother on the weekend of September 23, 2007, to chat about life. She'd been feeling under the weather and she was stressed out due to ongoing divorce proceedings, and her mother always provided a listening ear. Lisa told her mother that she planned to go to the doctor the next morning and then make the 6-hour drive to Louisiana to visit. That was the last time anyone heard from Lisa. She disappeared shortly thereafter, and her case is cold. So her file sits in a box in the basement.
2007 saw the beginning of the subprime mortgage crisis, the release of the first iPhone and Kindle, the launch of Twitter, and Romania and Bulgaria joined the European Union. A gunman murdered 32 people at Virginia Tech. Nancy Pelosi became the first female Speaker of the House in the U.S. Iran captured 15 British sailors, and Hamas formalized its stranglehold on the Gaza Strip. The Florida Gators became the first team to repeat as NCAA basketball champions since 1992, and then they also made history by winning the football national championship as well. That's American football for our international listeners. Roger Federer won his 5th consecutive tennis title, and a bunch of athletes were exposed in a steroid use investigation. Like, honestly, who cares? But whatever, that's where we were in 2007. The week of September 23rd, Soulja Boy Tell 'Em topped the Billboard Hot 100, with Kanye, Fergie, Tim, and T-Pain close behind. Rascal Flatts topped the country charts with Take Me There. Resident Evil Extinction ruled the box office that week, and 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini topped the New York Times bestseller list. Wolfe City, Texas is where our story takes place today. It's a small town in Hunt County with a population of about 1,500 people. It's about an hour northeast of Dallas and 40 minutes from the Oklahoma border at the crossroads of State Highway 34 and State Highway 11. It dates to the late 1860s or early 1870s when early settlers established a mill near Oyster Creek and started putting down roots. The Santa Fe Railroad came to town in 1887 and established an agricultural shipping hub there, and the town's population peaked in the early 20th century at around 1,900 residents. In 2007, much like today, it was known for its small-town charm, rural lifestyle, and close-knit community. Today, many of the residents of Wolfe City commute elsewhere for work, but there are employment opportunities in healthcare and manufacturing.
Lee Chandler was born on March 3, 1963, and we don't have much information about her childhood, but we do know that she lived for 20 years at her residence on Highway 34 in Wolfe City, Texas. She was 44 in 2007. She had 2 sons, Chris and Tyler, and she was very close to her mother, who lived in Starks, Louisiana, at the time of Lisa's disappearance. Lisa struggled with her mental health as an adult. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she was taking antidepressants. At the time of her disappearance, she was navigating a divorce, which increased her stress, exacerbated her mental health symptoms, and was reportedly taking a toll on her physical health as well. As we said in the intro, Lisa was talking to her mother on the phone the day she went missing. She was stressed out, and she was chatting with her mom throughout the day, talking about her impending divorce and the fact that she wasn't feeling well. She'd been having stomach problems, and it intensified to the point where she felt she needed help. She planned on going to the doctor the next day and then making the 6-hour drive to Starks, Louisiana to visit her mother. No reason was given for this trip, but I would imagine it was just for a break. Sometimes you just need a soft place to land when you're dealing with serious stress. Lisa's 2 sons were old enough to live on their own. At the time of Lisa's disappearance, they were living in Florida. Chris was in college, and Tyler lived there with him. Her son said they were very close to her and described her as a very involved and a great mother. Lisa's mother, Marie Johnson, said that she hung up with Lisa at around 3 in the afternoon. Marie had plans and needed to get ready. Like we mentioned already, Lisa had been really distressed recently, so Marie called her to check in after she returned home, somewhere around midnight, but nobody picked up. Marie tried calling Lisa again at 6 the next morning to no avail. It was completely out of character for Lisa not to answer when she called. So Marie contacted one of Lisa's friends in Wolfe City and asked him to go check on her. This guy went to Lisa's house, but he couldn't get to the door because the family dog was loose in the front yard and wouldn't allow him entry through the front gate. Marie immediately knew something was wrong and jumped in her car to make the 6-hour drive to Wolfe City.
Marie and her husband got to Lisa's house at around 1:30 that afternoon, and they found Lisa's car sitting outside in the driveway like normal, and the dog was indeed in the fenced-in front yard. Marie, since she knew the dog, was able to get inside the house, and she noted that the front door was unlocked, the TV was on, and some of the windows in the house were open. When she entered Lisa's home, she found her purse, ID, glasses, and cigarettes inside on the kitchen table, but no sign of Lisa. Marie didn't waste any more time. Her daughter never went anywhere without her cigarettes. So she called police for a welfare check and then promptly filed a missing persons report. Investigators learned that the last confirmed sighting of Lisa was at around 5 p.m. the previous evening outside of her home. She'd never made it to her doctor's appointment the next morning. Search dogs were deployed fairly quickly, and they were able to follow Lisa's trail for about 5 miles, heading south along Highway 34 before the trail disappeared. Law enforcement and local volunteers conducted extensive ground and airborne searches in the area using infrared technology that covered more than 1,500 acres around her home and the spot where she was last tracked by the dogs. Lisa's sons hurried home to Texas from Florida to help with the search, and they spent days on foot trudging around the area. And that's it. Lisa has never been seen or heard from again. We know she left her purse and her ID behind, and I'm guessing she also left behind any credit or debit cards she may have had. Her social security number has never been used in the time she's been missing.
So we're going to jump straight into possible explanations here because we simply don't have a ton of information, and neither do the police. The first and most obvious possibility is that Lisa was a victim of foul play. But here's where it gets a little bit dicey. The search dogs were able to track Lisa for 5 miles along Highway 34, heading south from Wolfe City towards Greenville, Texas. Greenville is about 17 miles south of Wolfe City. This means that more than likely Lisa was on foot. Now, it is possible for tracking dogs to follow someone's trail when they're in a vehicle, But that is dependent on a lot of factors, including the dog's ability and training, the car's ventilation system, weather, terrain, and the amount of traffic on the road in question. Was Lisa a regular walker? If so, did she normally walk along the highway or walk that far? 5 miles is fairly far from home, and it probably would have taken her around 2 hours to cover that distance, assuming she was out walking voluntarily. Turning around and heading back would have taken her another 2 hours. This was September, so the days were still fairly long. But if she was last seen around 5 p.m. near her home, she would have gotten back home at 9 p.m. at the earliest. I checked and the sun set at 7:20 on that date. And remember, her mother found her TV on, her door unlocked, windows open, and all her important personal items in the kitchen. If she did leave home under her own power, it does seem she was planning to come back.
So I'm a big walker. I walk in the dark, early morning, and late evening. I don't think that part is too unreasonable. The distance is what's throwing me. 5 miles one way is odd. We know she struggled with her mental health, so maybe she set out on a short walk to clear her head and she just lost track of time. Her family said it was completely out of character for her to just leave home for any reason for any period of time without telling someone, though. I doubt it was a matter of getting lost. She lived on Highway 34, and she had lived on Highway 34 for some 20 years, and it's a straight shot on that road from Wolfe City to Greenville. I can't find any information that points to the fact she was a regular walker, jogger, runner, or anything like that, so this does strike me as odd.
And keep in mind that after about 5 miles, the tracking dogs lost her scent. There are many possible reasons for this, but the most likely explanation is that she got picked up by someone in a vehicle. And that's what investigators believe. Maybe she did set out on a short walk, lost track of time, or maybe become disoriented, and then realized she needed help getting home. Maybe a passing motorist with an ulterior motive stopped to pick her up, and then ended up kidnapping her and possibly killing her.
Do we think that maybe she left her home in the first place because of foul play or some kind of threat or disturbance there?
That I can't say, though I suppose it's possible. But why leave your purse behind and the doors unlocked and the dog in the yard? She was schizophrenic, so perhaps she simply felt she was in danger. We have no information on her symptoms or their severity or how they manifested, so that is just a guess at this point. There was no sign of disturbance at her home, no sign of forced entry, nothing overturned or broken or missing. So it probably isn't out of the question to consider that Lisa might have been experiencing some kind of mental health symptoms that led her to believe she was in danger or being threatened. She walked away, leaving her belongings behind, and then 5 miles from home, she got in someone's car. If she felt she was in danger, she may have requested a ride further away from her home. Perhaps she was dropped off and then met with trouble. Either foul play at the hands of someone in this mystery vehicle, or perhaps she was in an accident or otherwise injured herself and then succumbed somewhere in a field or a stand of trees. So law enforcement and volunteers searched the area around Lisa's house on foot and from the air. But Lisa ended up miles away in another town on another highway. Then it makes sense that no trace of her has been found.
As with any case involving a missing adult, we have to consider the possibility that Lisa left on her own. I don't feel like it's probable in this case. Yes, Lisa had a bunch of stressors in her life. She was going through a divorce. She hadn't been feeling well. She had an empty nest with both of her kids living in another state. But from what we do know about Lisa, it was very unusual for her to just leave for any length of time without telling someone. She talked to her mother regularly, and her mother got concerned after just a few hours of not hearing from her. That says something to me. To drive 6 hours because your daughter didn't make contact for half a day? That says a thing, as my friend James would say. She left her purse, her ID, and her car behind, which are all things you'd want to have if you were going to try to move away or start over. And as we noted before, nobody has used Lisa's social security number since she went missing. So it's very unlikely that she simply walked away from her life unless she had a whole disappearance scheme planned out and financed ahead of time. But again, based on what we know about Lisa, that doesn't sound like her either. So that's where we are with Lisa Lee Chandler's case today. She was last seen at her home on the 5500 block of State Highway 34 in Wolfe City, Texas, at around 5 p.m. on September 23, 2007. Lisa would be 62 years old today. She is 5'6" and white with hazel eyes, and she had brown hair and weighed around 110 pounds when she disappeared. She has scars on her chin, upper lip, and near her left eye. If you have any information on her disappearance, please contact the Hunt County Sheriff's Office at 903-453-6800.
At the time of this recording, on September 23, 2025, marks 18 years of Lisa Chandler's disappearance. If you want more information, you can find her case in the Doe Network and NamUs.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcast creators, host, and guest.
If you or someone you know is a victim of crime, support is available. Call 855-4-VICTIM to speak with someone who can help you understand your rights and options. Visit victimconnect.org to learn more.
If you like what you hear, please do us a favor and subscribe. It would help so much, my lovelies. If you think bringing unsolved cases is important, then please take a moment to rate and review our podcast. Share this episode so we can bring awareness to these lesser-known cases so we can reach more people in hopes that someone who may know something will come forward. I'd also like to ask that you sign my petition for my Uncle Leon Laurelis' case to be reopened and reviewed with fresh eyes. And you can find our petition on change.org. This podcast has a bigger purpose than just providing information and entertainment. The Homicide Victims Families Rights Act is a bipartisan bill that was signed into law by Congress in 2021, and we want to see it put into action. This law establishes a systematic process for reviewing case files related to cold case murders. The focus is on providing a mechanism for the families and friends of murder victims to request a formal review of such cases. Thank you for joining us. Be kind. Later, Gators.